Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. We've had some interesting developments in Modern Warfare 3 and Warzone over the past couple of weeks. When it comes to certain gameplay elements being teased, oftentimes it's just through announcements. Hey, we're going to test out this, or hey, we are monitoring the requests or the want for this from the community. And that's how we've seen certain changes evolve over the course of time. Well, with the recent update to MW3, it seems like it is basically an experimental mode without being titled an experimental mode, and it could have some major impacts on Warzone. What we are talking about is the arcade mode that debuted in Modern Warfare 3 just a little while back. This is very much so an extremely gimmicky mode. You drop in, you can pick up all sorts of different power-ups, whether it be unlimited frag grenades or unlimited ammo, so you can just spray and pray for a set period of time without ever having to reload. There's minigun pickups, there's a Morris with explosive ammo, there's a Riveter shotgun with explosive ammo. The details of this game mode, seemingly, you know, face value, it's just like, okay, it's a fun kind of wacky one-off mode meant to just goof around in. Well, at its core, there are some specific features here that, well, could, like I said, have some lasting impacts on Warzone. We know that Sledgehammer throughout the year, and especially more so towards the launch of Modern Warfare 3, was running these things called experimental playlists, and they officially called them as that. They'd post a tweet saying, hey, we're going to test out, you know, what it'd be like with player outlines, and if you guys like this, then it might become a main feature. If not, it is what it is. It's just an experimental playlist, or they'll do it with different map rotations or different mechanics here and there. Well, we really haven't heard about these experimental playlists in quite some time. There's been no mention of them from Sledgehammer. We've just seen random LTMs come and go like we would in any given season, and that's not out of the ordinary. But within the arcade mode playlist, a few things have been pointed out, and it's like, hey, wait a minute. What if this actually is an experimental playlist? It's just not being called one, and this is a testing area for potentially some major gameplay updates. Quite frankly, it would make a lot of sense. The first thing that we actually talked about back when the arcade mode playlist was revealed in a Call of Duty blog is that it mentioned specifically some of those power-ups in-game are going to be designated by having floating loot. You'd be able to tell it was the explosive Morris, not only because, you know, it's glowing red and orange and has this whole like aura around it, but it was floating on the map. Same deal with the Riveter. Even the basic power-ups like being able to get the unlimited frags or extra ammo are also floating like munitions boxes that are very easy to interact with. You basically just run over them, or with the other weapons, you just quickly pick them up like you would anything on the ground as ground loot. Well, obviously within Warzone, a big talking point for the past little while is the lack thereof of floating loot. Back in Warzone 1, that was the standard thing. The looting and the engagements were sometimes obnoxious. You'd accidentally pick up some things here and there, but for the most part, when you compare the floating loot of Warzone 1 to the grounded loot of Warzone 2, and then currently now in Warzone 3, I think it's a drastic difference. The fluidity of gameplay is not as good now as it was back in Warzone 1. So many times I'm trying to interact with something in the world or pick up something in a pile, and because it's all on the ground, even though it's not necessarily stacked up on top of each other, it's really hard to sometimes pinpoint exactly what I want to do. There's also times where I'm not even looking at the ground and I'm accidentally picking things up, and there's just a lot of really annoying, obnoxious interactions now with the grounded loot, way more so than back in Warzone 1 with the floating loot. So ever since that feature was taken away for really who knows what reason, it's been a major complaint. Hey, floating loot was better. Can we have floating loot back? Well, Modern Warfare 3 is currently testing floating loot, and because we're all through the COD HQ now and every game connects to the Call of Duty HQ, this means that what could work in Modern Warfare 3 multiplayer could be applied to Warzone on a larger scale. So while this is just simply, you know, speculation and theorizing, it's very possible that the arcade playlist is testing out floating loot to see what the general perception of interacting with these things is, and it could be applied to Warzone in a future update. There's also a significant movement update that's been teased in this arcade playlist. And as we get into this, quick reminder, if you guys are new here or you simply have not subscribed yet, this is your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about Call of Duty updates, news, meta breakdowns. It's all right here on a daily basis, so feel free to hit that subscribe button to stay up to date. And if you enjoy this video, if you guys want to see these things added to Warzone, drop a like on it. It shows both me and potentially any developers or anyone from Call of Duty who's watching this that these are highly sought after features and we want to see this stuff back in the game. But anyway, another feature that was actually sort of much more secretly introduced into the arcade playlist is actually bunny hopping, bee hopping, a movement mechanic that we had way back in Warzone 1. It was used a lot in gunfights, and then obviously Warzone 2 dropped. They put concrete bricks on everyone for shoes, and you couldn't move anymore, and bunny hopping really wasn't a thing. You could obviously still string together a bounce into an ADS, into a bounce, but you really weren't getting much movement out of it. Really, all you were doing was kind of hopping, in a very minimal way, just to throw off the enemy's aim a tad bit. It was more so a deterrent for enemy's aim than it was for you using movements to your advantage. And in MW3 here, it's kind of the same scenario. It's a little bit faster just because of how the movement works now and it being a bit more aggressive, but true bunny hopping, if you were to go into Warzone right now and try and do it versus jumping into the arcade playlist and doing it there, it's night and day. It is so smooth, so easy to get very significant bunny hops in this arcade mode that really everyone would be able to use this movement mechanic to their advantage in fights, and it'd create for some pretty wild gameplay. And more importantly here is that way back, I want to say it was maybe the season 2 dev call. It was one of the dev calls that we've been on prior to a season launching. The devs were asked about movement and specifically bunny hopping, and they did mention, hey, there's currently no plans to introduce it, but it is something that we are looking into in the back end. It's something that we're messing around with. Don't rule it out for a future update, but don't necessarily guarantee that it's something that's going to happen. It was basically just something on their to-do list of things to try out. And lo and behold, it pops up in the arcade mode, potentially as an experimental update to see how players respond to it. So it is quite possible that both floating loot and bunny hop movement mechanics could be returning to Warzone in the future. Keyword here obviously is could. Once again, this is just me theorizing based off the changes that were made in this mode, but it would certainly make a lot of sense based off of general community feedback that I've seen 100 times in the comments on my videos, of course, but also just going around the COD community. Players want these features back, and lo and behold, they end up in a multiplayer trial playlist or an LTM for a set period of time. So very interesting there. We already can kind of see the pattern too with Warzone 3 just across the board. They are constantly making changes with every seasonal update, with every mid-season update to bring gameplay a lot more in line with Warzone 1, trying to make it a lot more one-to-one parallel of an experience. Now, it's definitely, I don't think, ever going to hit that true one-to-one. There are certain things that have to be changed now for the sake of how the game works at its core, but trying to make that experience and trying to mimic that experience to Warzone 1 as close as possible, it certainly seems like that's their end goal here, especially this year heading into COD 2024. So personally, at this point, I would not be surprised at all if in a future seasonal update, the patch notes mention, hey, we've updated the bounce effect on continued bunny hops, or, when you continuously jump in game to better reflect a bunny hop movement like Warzone 1, or hey, we've raised the elevation of total loot to have a floating appearance in game. And I think those would probably be pretty positively received across the board. So certainly something to keep an eye on here. Obviously, if there's any announcements formally on this stuff in a blog post or through their Twitters, or if it does end up going into patch notes, I'll be sure to keep you guys updated with all the need to know info right as it happens. So stay tuned for that alongside everything else going on in COD by hitting that subscribe button. And if you guys enjoyed the video, do me a favor and drop a like on it, as it is always really appreciated. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day, and I'll catch you later. Peace out.